Okay, well, let's look at the slides and the information you brought to us today.
Okay, well, one or two points of interest this morning in Europe. First of all, we had GDP data from across the continent, but I've just picked out what I see as the two principal numbers. First of all, GDP for Q3 for Germany came in bang in line at plus 1.8%, exactly what people were expecting, though that is weaker on trend if you look at it in that respect, but it's not out of line with economists' forecasts. And then for the wider Eurozone, we did have a miss. Q3 GDP here coming in at plus 1.6% versus the forecast of a gain of at least plus 1.7%. So worrying again for the ECB, and that to some extent has been compounded by a Spanish harmonised index of consumer prices. This is the number that the ECB, or the measure of inflation that the ECB prepares, or prefers I should say, to focus on. October's number, and this is on a year-on-year basis, and minus 0.9%, again bang in line with the forecast of minus 0.9%, but again in deflationary territory. So as we'll see with it, when we look at the chart at the end, whatever the ECB is doing, it's not doing it well enough and it's not working.
Well, and there's also the theory that it's actually the wrong policy anyway,
that's
given
also very true.
the experience of the last 7 years everywhere that the policy has been done. Okay, so next week? Okay,
well, it's quite a busy calendar next week. We start with some equally important data for consumer price index for October for the whole of the Eurozone. So we get a read on inflation across the whole 27 member states. Then we get Italy's trade balance on Tuesday. Again, it'd be interesting to see how they fare, how their economy is moving and shaking, as it were. UK PPI and CPI, so the double whammy of inflation data on Tuesday as well, here for the UK. Tuesday also sees the release of the ZEW surveys for Germany and the Eurozone. So we get the current conditions index there and the look ahead. So just really what investors are thinking, their sentiment towards conditions now and to the future. And then amongst the other items next week, UK retail sales for October released on Thursday. Retail sales obviously taking on more and more importance in developing economies, or other developed economies I should say, because the consumer and the service side of the economy is so important to the recovery.